clock says 6:30, so I will go ahead and call the Village of Essex Junction Board of Trustees meeting to order for Tuesday, February 9th. Thank you all for joining. Just one note of housekeeping. If you are not speaking, please make sure your microphone is muted so that way we don't get background noise, we don't get feedback. Would be greatly appreciated. And do we have any agenda additions or changes for tonight?
Greg? I don't believe so. None.
Anything from the trustees?
I was going to make a very, very minor request for more info in the memos from Robin, but I don't think that needs to require pulling that out of the consent agenda, the reading file, excuse me.
No, I would agree. Okay, so if there are no changes, then we don't need to have a motion to amend the agenda, no need to approve the agenda, and that will bring us into public to be heard. So this is a portion of the meeting for tonight where if you have something that you would like to bring to the board's attention, this is the moment to do so. Now, if your question or concern has anything to do with the budget, with the Bike Walk Advisory Committee grant application, or anything else on the agenda, there will be times during the meeting for public input, so I ask you to please hold your comments or questions until then. And the way we will do this is we will prioritize those who are using Microsoft Teams. So if you are using Teams, you can go ahead and raise your hand or use the chat feature to tell me that you would like to speak. I will call on you and you can address your question or comment to me and we will go from there. If you are calling in, I will get to you later on. So if you are using Teams, now is the time to let me know you'd like to talk to the board. I see no hands being raised on Teams. There are no comments in the chat section. So we will move away from Microsoft Teams, and it does not appear that any of our guests are calling in. And as none of our guests are calling in, no need to go to the phones. So we can move off from the public to be heard, and we can jump into the agenda. Evan, I see that the public to be heard, or I'm sorry, I see that the public hearing had a warning for 6:35. We are 2 minutes early.
Stretch it. Say something nice.
I don't think you want to see me do a song and dance for 2 minutes. How about we rearrange things and just go to the first business item, 6A? I think that can be kind of quick.
Okay.
I was kind of hoping Dan would dance, but you know, whatever.
You're the president. You want to do 6A? Do 6A.
Let's jump to 6A.
I think Mike is here.
Well, I'm not sure if staff was going to introduce us or how this was going to come about. Micah, if you are here and you want to introduce us to the board, I'm more than happy to have you do so.
Sure. Yeah, I am chair of the Bike Walk Committee, and what we're proposing is we have a small project grant opportunity that would allow us to leverage our existing budget by another 100% to get 2 crossing beacons at the Main, Pleasant, and Lincoln Central crossings in the village. These are items that are either ones that have been brought by the public as a safety concern or were put on the list due to, you know, high usage and school crossings and that sort of thing. This would exhaust the Bike Walk Committee budget for the year, but as we're coming up on June before we know it, I don't think that's going to be a major issue. So we're just looking for the trustees' approval to proceed with this. The deadline for the grant application is later this month. Any questions about that or what we're trying to do?
I appreciate you bringing this up, Micah. I would say those locations make a lot of sense given the amount of traffic that they receive. One question I do have, I think you just addressed it though, is are there any concerns about not having a budget after that?
We don't really have any other expenses that we're committed to for the remainder of this financial year. So no, I don't think that's really going to be an issue.
Okay. Amber, your hand's up. Go ahead.
I don't actually have a question for Micah. I have a question. I think I'll direct it more towards Sarah. I was looking at the capital list and the grant application and noticed that they also are looking for applications for sidewalks and stuff. Is there anything on our list, on our giant list, that might be eligible, small amounts for that we might be able to take advantage of? Do you know? Or is that something that we could have staff look into just because I'd like to be able to capitalize, pun intended, on the grant if we can get additional monies for some of these sidewalks and stuff that we still need to do.
Can I just ask you a clarifying question, Amber? Are you just asking if staff is pursuing grants related to the capital project list?
I'm not asking that in a broad sense. I'm just asking about it for this particular grant.
I really don't know. I do not know
Okay.
the answer to your question. So probably not, Ben.
It does have a, never mind.
Evan, your hand's up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I know that when we see grants come out, we talk as a staff, whether it's Ricky Jones in the village, Dennis, Aaron in the town, and together we talk about what we would want to apply for. When we see these grants, we decide what we want to go after and whether we think we have a chance. But I will certainly tomorrow go talk to Ricky and Dennis and see if there was anything that we may have missed and try to go for the deadline.
Yeah, I suspect that that the projects that we have are too extensive for this grant, but I guess I thought I might as well ask it given that it was in front of us.
And I can't say that I memorize all the state grants that come out, but I seem to remember the sidewalk grant not being extensively lucrative to what they're trying to do. So we just kind of said, let's hold our powder for something that we really want to go after. And Mike, I think you guys, we do support what I like to call blinky, flashy lights. And so that's what we also try to get grant funding for. But a lot of sidewalk work, they don't fund replacement of sidewalks. They tend to fund new sidewalks and connections to sidewalks and paths. But we'll take another look at it tomorrow.
Raj, go ahead.
I guess along the lines of, well, sort of what Amber was saying, I'm curious if, we're still leveraging the very low end of the range of this grant at, $6,000 or $7,000. I just wonder if there are other locations that may be suitable for more of these blinky, flashy crossing lights and maybe some in-road, on-road markers as we've been adding around to crosswalks in the fair seasons. If that's not something we may want to stretch a little bit outside of the black budget to look at while we have this in front of us, and maybe get some of this done all in one fell swoop. I don't know how that would impact the request on the grant, but I don't know if there's interest of that on the board or the wherewithal for us right now to do that. But
Sarah, go ahead.
I just wanted to, just in case you guys weren't all thinking about the current year budget, there is $20,000 in the village general fund budget for matching grant funds. So in addition to the bike walk appropriation, every year the village does put $20,000 in for matching grant funds in case grants come up that require a match.
so if we were to look at part of that, it was just a thought to see what the board thought.
I know that, just speaking for myself, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to having staff do some research into it, but at the same time, Micah, can you remind us what is the due date for the grant?
I believe it's like the 18th or 19th. That's coming up quick. Let me.
And it also wouldn't, right, we wouldn't have another meeting before then, unless we wanted to schedule a special one. So while I'm not opposed to doing the research, I also don't want to lose out on the opportunity. Getting the bright, blinky, flashy lights are certainly a priority for the community and would love to not lose out on that opportunity. Maybe we could research this for a subsequent year, as if I remember correctly, this is an annual grant. And so should, all things being considered, should be available again next year. Those are just my thoughts. Do other board members have other questions before we ask for public input?
I don't have questions, Andrew.
Rush?
Micah, do you have a further list beyond these two?
This is actually pretty close to the end of our list. Once we get these ones done, we'd be kind of looking to scope out other areas of interest, maybe reach out to the public and get some input there.
Okay.
I know there's at least one more on Maine that was brought up. I have to go back and see which that was.
Okay, so it might not make sense to kind of with the due date. It may not make sense to go down that road at this point. No pun intended. That was terrible.
It's all good.
If you said sidewalk, it would have been better, but
It's horrible.
The analogy wouldn't work. The metaphor wouldn't,
Go down that path.
All right, so before we make a decision, why don't we turn this over for public comments? And so again, if you are a member of the public and want to comment on this and are using Microsoft Teams, you can go ahead and raise your hands, or you can type into the chat feature that you would like to chat. And Annie, go right ahead.
As a member of the Bike Walk Advisory Committee, I had been hopeful to be able to interject during that conversation. Micah, do you mind if I just
Go for it.
free flow it here? I just realized while we were all talking that I had never presented the petition with 116 signatures on it for the crosswalk at the corner of Main and Pleasant. And what I'd like to do, first of all, is tell you that that petition exists and that Raj Chalwa leapt into action, showed up at the first Bike Walk Advisory Committee that we brought the petition to, solidified an engagement with Micah and the rest of the Bike Walk Advisory Committee. I then joined the Bike Walk Advisory Committee, thanks to Micah and Seth and Elijah and, oh, whom I forget, Micah, and everybody for welcoming me in there. And so I would strongly suggest that we add that third crosswalk at the Main and just below Church Street, which is an also dicey situation. A young student was got her leg broken by a car a couple of years back at that corner over there. She wasn't crossing Main, but it was at that turn at Church, and so we had meant to write the petition. So I mean, as a resident, as a Bike Walk Advisory, I'm kind of free flowing it back and forth. We had intended to write the petition for both of those crosswalks. We felt concerned that we didn't know that everyone was going to leap up and help so fast. We're so grateful. And Micah has just been extraordinary, and the committee. And then Seth brought up the other crosswalk that you see before you, which has long been in need of being looked after. I really like what Sarah was saying, and I don't think it's too big a leap of faith to take it for one more, but I don't know all of the particulars that I'm asking of us. But that would be great to get all three under our belt before the new fiscal year. Am I saying that correctly? I also know that there was a preschool conversation with the EGRP preschool about the crosswalk right over there by the where the preschool is, about children needing to cross right over. I know that there's construction, but to cross over at Park Street. Yeah. So I mean, if I'm happy to work hard and work fast, if those are things that we can add to this, I would be delighted to press in. But all that being said, I don't want to mess with what Micah has already done, and I don't want to, right, I see you nodding too, George. I don't want to lose our our ability to get that clear path to the 2 that we asked for. Does that all make sense? Great. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you very much.
And Annie, my sincerest apology to you. I completely forgot you were on the Bike Walk Advisory Committee.
That's
So
okay. I was like waving up, but also, Mike and Seth are both here. I didn't mean to like leap into the fray like I had that strong a voice at that table either. So I hope I wasn't disrespectful in any way to anyone.
No, you're fine.
Thanks.
All right, any other members from the public have comments, questions on this? Okay, seeing none. So I'm just going to be blunt in terms of whether we apply for 3 or whether we apply for 2. I would really look to Micah, the rest of the trustees, if you all feel that it's worth the risk to apply for 3 instead of 2, in terms of, is it too much? Are we putting ourselves out for a greater risk? Or is this money that we could get regardless and we're underfunding, or we're potentially losing out on money? If you guys feel that you want that, I'm good with it. I don't care. If you don't feel that this could harm us in any way, great. But I don't know whether or not that has any reality in it. So I'd really look to you on that.
Given that and even with 3, we'd still be on, the lower end of this grant application. I don't think that's putting in the project at a significant risk to add 1 more to it. And our limitations were based on the BWAC budget would be exhausted at 2, but if the trustees are willing to fund more, we could add that.
Well, so it sounds as if we have the additional funds within, and Sarah, please correct this statement if it is incorrect in any way, but it sounds like we have the additional funds within the matching grant to allow for this. And again, as long as that wouldn't shortchange us for any other potential offer.
The funds are available, and as Micah said, it's almost June. I mean, so.
So I would be fine if we were to change the motion to reflect 3 beacons with a grant application not to exceed.
And that would bring us up to about 21 total, with 50% of that being matched.
Total grant, a total application of 21,000 with half being from local funds. I would be completely fine with that, and you guys can figure out where that 3rd location would be. So I saw Seth, Annie, and Evan. I'm not sure which of the 3 of you had your hands up first. Seth, haven't heard from you yet. If you want to go first, then Annie, then Evan.
Yeah, I was just going to tack on that the 3rd beacon would only be an additional 3,500 approximately out of the budget. So kind of it's pretty small adder to what we were currently asking for, but I think that was already well covered.
Thank you, Seth. Annie?
2 things. One, I do want to ask Micah and Seth if we're sure that I'm not. Seth, I panicked that maybe there was one other crosswalk that I should have been. Am I correct? Am I reasonably correct that this is the next important one that I'm speaking to, Seth and Micah?
I think that is right. That is what I had in my mind as kind of our next priority.
Great, thank you. And Seth, you feel good too?
Yes, Annie.
Thank you. And then secondly, am I correct through my understanding of Sarah and everything else that, by the way, I'm like crying over here. I'm so moved by this conversation right now. Am I correct that that the
Could you direct your question to the chair, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew. Well, am I correct, Andrew? Thanks, Evan. Am I correct, Andrew, that the money, sorry about that, that the money will not damage the refreshment of the funds for the BWAC for this upcoming fiscal year?
That's my understanding based on what Sarah had already mentioned, is that those funds would come out of this current fiscal year, not next fiscal year.
It depends on when the expenditure happens. So if the expenditure doesn't happen until July, it's next year. If it happens before July, it's this year.
So along those lines, do we know when the grant award for this would be?
Let me check what their projection is for that. I'll have to get back to you.
And I was just skimming through the document as well. Annie, was it, okay. Go ahead.
I don't know if I was clear in I'm not sure if I understand what I just asked or if I'm being clear, Andrew. I guess I'm trying to say is, if we get the third one, is it like a freebie in the budget so that it does not affect the BWAC budget upcoming because there's funding available for it?
You know what? I'll be happy to try to answer.
Go ahead,
that.
Evan.
Our fiscal year runs through June 30th. If they're applying for a grant now and we get the funds before June 30th, we will try to do them before June 30th. If it happens afterwards, it goes to the next year, which the bike walk has money in the budget for that, and the board has the same 20,000. If these are the priorities, and this is what the board wants to do with their grant priorities, great. Let's go forward. The other thing is, when you do this motion, could you also please add in, for just sake, any other expenses related to the installation will get covered by the grant funds, because we don't budget for these things. And if there's some other electrical work or other things that end up being done outside of the grant, we'd like to do it while we're there.
Thank you, Evan. Go ahead, Raj.
The grant program timeline says notifications to all applicants March 15th. Grant agreements in place end of April. So the timeline works. Project construction May to October 2021. So if we can, okay, hold on, just scroll down. Pardon me. Sarah, invoicing reimbursement is November to December 2021, but we will have expended our share of that prior, right?
Right. So the expenditure happens when goods are received or services rendered. And then we'll have a receivable for the associated grant revenue at the end of the fiscal year. One of the other things that we could explore, if it all happens to be next year and we're underspent on these two budgets in the end of FY21, we could talk about assigning those funds to allow them to roll over as well. So those are just all things, though, that don't happen until, December at the earliest.
So it sounds like what we may be able to do is to just have a motion to support the purchase and installation of 3 LED beacon RRFB lights in the village. I don't think we need to get into the minutia of how much it's going to be. I think you guys can all figure that part out, and that gets well in line with the spirit of this, while also fitting into the ensuring that it's not just the material, but also the cost of installation.
Works for us.
Yep.
I would say so moved.
Yep. I think you articulated it perfectly, Andrew. So we'll go with your motion.
All right. So Raj has a motion. Did someone want to second that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, George.
But I do want to ask a question, Micah. Is everyone cool with this work, that this additional piece of work you're going to do on time? You okay with that?
The modifications to the grant application?
Yep.
Yeah, that'll just take a few minutes.
Yep. Good.
So the motion's been made, it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, that passed unanimously. Micah, Bike Walk Advisory Committee, really appreciate your efforts on this. Really appreciate the dancing in the background so that I don't have to do that. Really appreciate all of your work on this. Thank you. I know the community appreciates it as well.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Have a good night.
You as well. All right, well, we are definitely past 6:35, so why don't we go ahead and go to the public hearing for I will go ahead and I will call the public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 proposed budget and capital programs to order. And just so everybody is aware as to how this will work, our finance director, Sarah Macy, will go through a presentation. Seeing as this is a public hearing, what we will then do is after the presentation, we will have time for public comments. So if there are questions or comments from the public, that will be the time to do so. I'll make sure to say that again when we get to that point. When we get there, all questions should be directed to me, and I may have to ask staff for assistance in answering them. And if you have any questions throughout the process, let me know. So with that, Sarah, take it away.
Thanks, Andrew. Are you seeing my screen okay?
We are, yes.
Awesome. Okay, so my plan is to start with a high-level overview of the budgets, and then I have all the details available to help to clarify anything for any questions. So I just want to make a quick note. The presentation is going to cover all funds of the village, which is the general fund, the capital funds, and all the enterprise funds. There is only one of these funds that's actually voted on by voters at annual meeting or on the ballot this year, and that is the general fund. So that's going to be the focus of the presentation, but I am going to touch on the other items as well, as is customary in the village. So we are talking about the fiscal year 2022 budget. This is the time period that runs July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. Oops. Overall, the village general fund budget is very similar to the last couple of years. There are just a couple of changes that I have highlighted here. The most notable is that there has been a formatting change whereby I have moved the rolling stock transfer, which is for highway vehicles and fire vehicles, out of the transfers and miscellaneous costing center and into the respective departmental costing centers. The portion of this that is associated with highway rolling stock is then proposed to be included in the transfer from the town of Essex, which funds the village highway budget. That has not been approved yet because that would be in the town budget, and that goes to town voters in the beginning of March. However, the town budget that's been adopted by the select board to go to the voters does include that in. The only other large dollar change is that we have included an additional $25,000 in the transfer to the building's maintenance fund in order to address a couple large dollar high priority projects.
Sarah, can I just interrupt for a quick moment and ask that if you are not speaking and are joining the meeting, if you could please mute yourself, it would be appreciated so we don't get background noise. Thank you.
Yeah. I just did some muting of folks. So I was in a big training once and I did that, and it was the speaker on accident. So I'm trying to be careful now. But so anyway, so there's the additional $25,000 that increases the annual transfer to the building maintenance fund from $50,000 to $75,000 to help address the two priority projects, which is the roof at the Brownell Library and an electrical project between 2 Lincoln and the fire station. Outside of that, the largest costing center or the largest cost driver in actually the town and the village budgets are personnel, which I think is no surprise to anybody. Staffing levels remain stable, and we actually had a pretty stable insurance budget year over year for health insurance and dental insurance, employee benefits such as those, because in last year's budget, we had the actual cost came in lower than budgeted. And so then we based our new budget off of the actuals with, a planned increase. And so those remained pretty much stable year over year. What I'm displaying on the screen now is a summary of the overall change. And so the overall budget is proposed to go from about $5.4 million, I'm rounding from FY21, to $5.64 million in FY22. This is a $274,000 change. This is 5.1%. This is the bottom line expenditure budget. And so in a moment, I'm going to talk about how this impacts the tax levy and the proposed tax rate. And that's going to be, and why that's slightly different from this. Largest cost drivers here are going to be the increase in capital transfer. That's the $25,000 I talked about going to the buildings fund, as well as a planned 15% increase in the dollar amount going to the capital fund. This was recommended to the trustees by the capital committee for the last few years in a row. The next largest item is regular contractual increases to salaries and those benefits that I was talking about. And then we move into addressing some additional buildings maintenance needs that don't really rise to the level of capital. We do have a new initiative this year to pay stipends to all volunteer boards and committees, and increasing the amount paid for the trustees, the planning committee, and the zoning board of adjustment, the ZBA, which are the only three that are currently paid. Just a note here, that increase for the trustees will also show up as a separate line item as the ballot on the ballot. The dollars are included in the budget, so those won't be doubled up. We're just required to have specific approval for that item for the charter. In FY22, we will be conducting a salary study, which is a contractual obligation, and the Community Development Department will be working on the Land Development Code update, which are going to be some increases in professional services. We are intending to do some additional paving and patching projects, and we're working to get our SALT budget closer to where it's actually been over the last few years. There are other ups and downs throughout the budget that net to about $5,000. So those are the big ones. Okay, so taxes. We just looked at the overall bottom line budget, which came up to $5.64 million. The proposed tax levy, which is the amount to be raised by property taxes, is $3.75 million, which is a $76,000 increase, or 2.1%. When I look at a slight increase in the grand list based on the 7-year annual average, we're looking at less than a 1% change in the tax rate for village taxes. So why is this different from the bottom line in the budget? That's because non-tax revenues are changing to make up the difference. In particular, moving the highway rolling stock into the highway budget, which is then funded through a transfer from the town, makes up the majority of the rest of that. So we're looking at an estimated, it looks like about $9 on an average property that's assessed at $280,000, which is the average assessment in the town and the village, actually. So this is a graph that we show every year. And so this is actually current year, FY21, the year we're in right now, talking about how property taxes for an average home assessed at $280,000 in the village are divvied up. The majority of the taxes, or 65%, are going to the school. 21% of your tax bill is going to the town of Essex, and then 14% is going to the village of Essex Junction. So on a $280,000 home currently, those village taxes are about $953 a year. And we're talking about an increase of about $9, so $962 a year. That wasn't hard math, but doing, there's something nerve-wracking about being on camera and doing it on the fly. Okay, so that's my high overview of the general fund. Quickly, I'm just going to touch on what we're doing in the capital realm and then the enterprise funds, and then I'll open it up for questions, or I'll let Andrew open up for questions. So the village has a number of capital funds. There's the Capital Reserve Fund, which is for generally infrastructure projects. The Rolling Stock Fund, which is for things that roll. Took me a long time to wrap my head around that. EJRP has its own capital fund, and then the enterprise funds for water, sewer, and sanitation have their own capital funds as well. So some of the projects that we're either currently working on that are going to go into the next year or proposed to be new for the next year are a replacement to the Vector truck. That's a Super Sucker 5000. We're going to work on the Densmore Drive culvert replacement and the road reconstruction project, which I know we have been talking about over the last year or so. The capital funds in the enterprise funds also contribute to some debt payments. We're going to be working on energy conservation measures at the wastewater treatment facility, some manhole rehab, and then playground equipment, fencing, some pool chairs, and landscaping for Parks and Rec. The village has 4 primary enterprise funds. So the EJRP program fund, the water fund, the wastewater fund, and the sanitation fund. And so these funds do not rely at all on tax dollars. They rely completely on user fees. And so this is where the recreation programs such as childcare and summer camp and pool are budgeted for and paid for, and those are all self-sustaining based on user fees, and same with water, sewer, and sanitation. The largest increase here is an increase to the EJRP program fund. What's happened is the childcare offerings have expanded, and that is just about the entirety of that increase. But it is budgeted to be made up with incoming revenue for those programs. I have just a few notes here about the enterprise fund. So the wastewater treatment facility is owned by the Village of Essex Junction, but it does serve the Tri-Town area, which is the town of Essex, the Village of Essex Junction, and the town of Williston. And the rates that are charged to the various user bases are based on average flows coming from those three communities. As flows have been increasing from the village over the last few years, that has caused the village rates to rise. The wastewater treatment facility also faces a number of challenges with state and federal regulations. I'm sure you all heard about the PFAS and stuff like that in the news. And so there's ongoing, and there's a lot of stuff going on with that, and there's ongoing and new regulations that seem to be coming out all the time. Additionally, there are some bond payments, and the sanitation fund grows every year a planned amount in order to build capacity in the rate to pay that debt service. We're also hoping to finish the water meter replacement program in the next year or two. So I'm just going to make a plug right now. If you haven't had your water meter changed out, please let us come change your water meter out. We have some exciting plans for some technology improvements once we get to the ending stages of that project. We have about 500 meters left. At this point, these are estimated utility rate changes for FY22, looking at overall less than 4% increase in July. That is estimated because what we'll do is at the end of the year, we'll reconcile the flows between the Tri-Town and look at water usage and total change in number of accounts. So those are not final yet, but that's where I see us going in the coming months. So I'm going to switch screens, where I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to hand it back to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Sarah. So as I had mentioned from the beginning, this is the point where, with it being a public hearing, if you have a question on the budget that you have just heard, please go ahead and raise your hand or type into the comment feature or the chat box that you would like to speak. And that'll let me know that you wish to address the board. So now is the time to go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question. Questions going once.
So, Andrew, I have a question.
If you don't mind hanging on, who was that, Raj?
Wait, I can handle it.
Yeah, if board members, if you don't mind hanging on, we're just going to prioritize the public portion of this, and we'll come back to the board. So, Marcus, I see your hand is up. Go right ahead.
Thanks. A quick question. I just wanted to ask about what was the goal or prioritization in coming up with this budget and these numbers? Was it to maintain from the year previous? Was it to grow? Was it to pull back? Can I ask what that objective was from the trustees?
Sure. So the objective was to maintain the same quality and level of service as what our community has had. So no growth, no change, really to ensure that our community was able to maintain the same services we've enjoyed for these years.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions from the public? Seeing no
Andrew,
other
Andrew,
questions.
I think you have someone by the name of Paul who looks like he's speaking, but his microphone is turned off. No? Okay, sorry. I could see you speak. I could see your lips moving and I wasn't sure.
Just talking to myself.
Oh, okay, dude, no problem. Do that all the time. I totally get it.
All right, so seeing as there are no members from the public who had comments or any other comments, Raj, you had one, go right ahead.
Yeah, just for the Densmore Drive, we're expecting some FEMA money back for that. What is the expected final outlay should everything go as planned for that project? I'm
I
trying
will
to
have to
Sarah.
get back to you.
Okay. It's I guess my question is basically it's unlikely to be the full $800,000.
Well, I'm thinking, I'm thinking that was, let me get back to you.
Yeah, no
Let's go
problem. That's good. Yep.
Raj, I could tell you that FEMA does not fund 100%. We will be lucky if we are in the 80% range
Mhm.
for FEMA funding, along with any state funds.
Sure. Yeah, I was just trying to clarify. It's a big number. So just trying to.
Yeah, it is a big number. It's a very difficult job because there is a active stream running under it. That's why it washed out. There are utilities running through there that are not easy to move and locate and reestablish. So it may look small, and it really, I mean, it's like 60, 70 feet of work, but it's over an active stream, which is also an impaired stream, according to the state. And so therefore, there's a whole lot of, and it's right next to 2 active driveways. So it's a fun one. Not for the neighbors and not for the property owners, but it's delicate.
Go ahead, George.
I don't really have a question. I just have a comment, and Sarah can or Evan can correct me on this. And I think overall it's very good news that the actual dollar increase for village taxpayers is pretty low. But I do want to point out that this year for the town budget, they are eliminating the town highway tax, which was a tax that was paid exclusively by town residents outside the village, and that means I think it was somewhere in the order of 150 or something like that last year, and so that cost will now be distributed throughout the community. I think it's appropriate. I think it's fine. I'm not protesting, but I do want to just point out that the good news on the village end. There's probably a little bit higher than usual increase on the town tax end. And I don't know if you wanted to comment on that, Sarah or Evan. Am I correct?
You're correct. I thank you for bringing that up, George.
Yeah.
I do think that for village residents, the town tax increase is looking like about $55, I think, which is higher than normal. But the increase on the village side is lower than normal, right? Whatever that is.
And so they balance.
Yeah, okay. It balances out. And so that the net effect of that one action, which is moving the rolling stock into the highway budget in the village side, which is then funded by the town, while also eliminating the town outside the village highway tax, comes very close. It's a very small net effect. These are, big, complicated budgets, so it does kind of get buried, but that one piece is having a small effect overall. So thank you for bringing that up, George.
Yeah, and Sarah, I mean, I don't understand why you can't get your head around a rolling stock tax. It's pretty straightforward, man. Anything that rolls. Come on. How hard is that?
I mean, it's been like 3.5 years now, and I just,
come on.
Like, what's wrong with vehicles and equipment?
If they've got wheels on it, It's in the rolling stock, okay? Just got to think differently. You got to just think differently.
All right, well, it seems as if there are no other questions on the budget for the public hearing, and as such, we can go ahead and close the public hearing on the FY22 budget. And that will bring us to our next business item, 6B, to consider the approval of the April 2021 budget question for increase of the village trustees stipend.
Right, so I'm going to take this one. So as I mentioned, let me get this packet up. As I mentioned, as I was, during as I was running through the budget stuff, the budgeted increase to the trustees is required by the village charter to go on, to be voted on separately at annual meeting. And so it's going to go on the ballot as a separate question, in addition to having the dollars included in the budget already. And so this is just the formal action to approve putting that on the ballot so that we can do that.
Thank you, Sarah. George, if you don't mind me putting you a little bit on the spot, this the amount of 500 has not changed since your tenure on the board, and as you are the longest serving trustee, how long have you been on the board?
Since 2008. And I'm gonna guess that back in the 20th century, that $500 was like a windfall at some point. I don't know when, when it kind of slowly transitioned into being just a little something that just sort of threw your checking account out of whack every couple of months. But yeah, it was $500 back in 2008. I have no idea how far back it goes. Probably, I have no idea. No idea. Long before me.
So the desire of this, I will say, I brought this up. The first increase since at least 2008. And the other thing that I would just add to this as well is, as we are increasing the stipends for the other boards, as Sarah had mentioned, the Zoning Board of Adjustment, as well as the Planning Commission, it would also help to make sure that the trustees have a stipend that is in line with other parts of the community. So with that, are there any questions on this from trustees or comments from trustees? George, is that hand a holdover?
Oh, sorry. Yep, I'll take it down.
No worries. So before we make a motion, are there any comments on this from the public? So again, if you're using Microsoft Teams, you can go ahead and raise your hand, or you can type into the chat feature to let me know you have a question, and I would be happy to call on you. And I see a hand from Marcus. Go right ahead.
Thanks. Again, I just would like to understand a little bit more about the motivation behind it, if I could, from you, Andrew. I mean, again, $500 to $1,000 for the number of hours I believe that you're putting into the work. Seems like a ridiculous. Here's a gift card and a thank you note. But at the same time, are you putting this forth because of trying to offset some of the trustees' costs, or are you putting this forth to try to help attract more people to these positions?
So I will only be able to speak to my personal motivation as to why I put this forward, or this request forward. For me, it is a mix of all of the above. It's a mix of the ability to hopefully to recognize, for one, the $500 from at least 2008 is no longer $500, and so it's to really increase that to something to help and recognize the amount of time that we put forth into meetings, especially given the amount of meetings we have had these past few years in regards to merger, and will continue to have in the years moving forward, regardless as to how the merger vote goes, while at the same time trying to hopefully increase the pool of applicants for trustees, for planning commission, for the zoning board, as well as our other committees where we are offering a stipend. As you said about $500, kind of being like a gift card and a thank you card. Certainly after taxes, this isn't anything that we're going and buying a second home for. It certainly is a nice thank you, though. And as such, trying to increase it will hopefully be able to entice others to run. I believe the election 2 years ago was the first time we had a contested election in the village for trustees since 2012, I believe. So maybe some competition will come out of this as well.
May I inquire from the other trustees as to their thoughts on this same motivation, where they might be coming from?
Absolutely. Other trustees, if you want to chime in as my dog is starting to bark, that would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I'll jump in right off. I believe it's, when it's compared to what's going on in the town right now, I don't know, what has it been, maybe 5 years or so ago that the town raised their stipend to $1,500. And I believe it was even higher than that initially, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, that I think they were talking maybe 3,000, maybe George could correct me on that. But anyhow, I don't so much do this job or run for office to make money, but for the time and the inconvenience, the travel, I belong as a rep to for the village on the Regional Planning Commission, and we'll travel to Winooski, not very far, but a meeting, at least one meeting a month there, and many of the other trustees are on other boards and commissions, so they associate with the responsibilities of being a trustee. So it does help offset some of the expenses associated with that. Thank you.
I mean, this is Raj. I'll jump in. I think, one of the things we've learned through these community conversations is that, there are some barriers to participation on committees, and that extends all the way up to the trustee level. And anything we can do to make it more possible for people to participate and consider serving in one of these roles, I think is important. I think every one of us would want to do this if it stayed at the current level, to be honest. But I think in my mind, I'm hoping this is an interval step to a higher amount that does make it possible for people from populations that we don't see participating at this level in our community. And I think that's critically important, especially as our community changes. So I'm hoping that this is a small step towards that, and I'll just agree with what everybody else has said so far.
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments and input on that. Thank you.
Okay.
George, if you wanted to chime in as well, I'm pretty sure that there would not be any complaints.
Oh, sure. I didn't know if Amber wanted to. I frankly, I was on the fence about it. As Raj said, I think we'd do these jobs anyway, even if there was no stipend. But when I'm on the fence about things and I can't figure out what to do, I try to listen to what my fellow trustees say, and Raj Chawla made a good argument in favor of doing it. And so in the name of solidarity with the rest of the board, I support it.
Amber, not to call you out, was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think everybody's covered it pretty well.
Okay. Thank you all for that. Annie Cooper, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Andrew. I think I appreciate exactly how Marcus phrased his question, and I agree with the terminology of that it's a tough spot to go all the way to 1,000 for a whole year. And I think that I appreciate everything you all said, and I agree with you. The hardest part about this, I think, is that you're sitting in the very seat that you're in discussion about this for, but really you're not asking for this for you, right? You're asking for this for our future. And so the complexity is that it looks like you're putting your hand up for yourself, and really you're just setting a tonality for our future. And I agree with this idea at 1,000,000%. And I love it that it's going on the ballot like this. And I really appreciate the conversation. And I just think everything about this is hard for you all to discuss and come to, because it looks like you're saying, hey, give me money for something you would obviously do for free anyway. But I think that the value of pushing this up to 1,000 and creating a space for people to understand that there is a financial respect for the role, and it puts us as residents and the board in a I think a more thoughtful relationship. So thank you all for your hard work and discussion on this, and I'm glad to see it's going forward.
Thank you, Annie. Are there any other questions on this? Seeing none, I will bring this back to the board. And so, board, if there are other questions, now is the time. Otherwise, if someone wants to make a motion, go right ahead.
I can make a motion, I guess. I'll move that the trustees approve adding a question to the 2021 village annual meeting ballot that reads, quote, shall the annual stipend for the position of a trustee of the village board of trustees be raised from $500 to $1,000, unquote.
Second.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Dan. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so that passed unanimously. Thank you all. And that brings us into 6C, discussion and possible approval of research for Economic Development Commission on potential initiatives like Phoenix Project Events. Robin Pierce, as you come to us, I love that name. But it's just your own name, Robin, but the Phoenix Project Events. Robin, are you with us?
It's a great name.
Sounds like.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry to disappoint you. I'm here. You may have heard it a lot, and maybe it's a bad play on words, but I just like PPE because it's been around a lot. So I put it in there as possible Phoenix events. I just think, you know, we've had 2 events. We started off with the opening outside and out and about, and we made a lot of contacts, and, you know, a lot of staff were involved. Annie Cooper was a rock star throughout the whole thing. And I think we have these contacts now. And, you know, the CDC has said maybe late summer, early autumn, there's an opportunity for people to get out and get, you know, a modicum normalcy. I thought it might be a nice thing to think about, maybe set it up, not be definite. I have spoken to a few people. It's a good marketing, advertising thing for the businesses. It also gets people out into the street and maybe a celebration of, you know, coming out the end of the tunnel, or at least getting to the end of the tunnel. I just think it'd be a wonderful thing to do. There may be some cost to it, but I wanted to just get a nod that it's something worth thinking about. I have, you know, being me, I have spoken to a few businesses already, one in the town, a few in the village, and they all thought it was a nice idea and they'd be willing to do it, participate. Some would do it just because it's a nice thing to do. Others would do it, you know, with a few funds to help them. But, you know, we've done that before, and it doesn't take a lot of money, you know, to plant a seed. And from that seed can come great things. And this would be planting the seed. It wouldn't be, you know, planting a mature tree.
Thank you, Robin. And that inspirational music starting to come through in the background there is really helping.
Oh, sorry, it's Enya.
No, I'm enjoying it. Speaking for myself.
As the man said once in the movie when he's interviewed the first guy ever in the front magazine, they said, when did you leave Ireland? And he looked and smiled at them and said, never.
Listening to Enya. That's awesome.
Do you want me to turn it down?
No. So speaking only for myself, I'm not going to lie. When I first read this, I went to my spouse and said, this is awesome. I'd love to see these things happen. These are classes. These are opportunities I know we would take advantage of. I know friends and neighbors would take advantage of many of these. I really appreciate you putting this forward and would love to see would love to see what can come out of this. My only ask of you would be to also include EJRP in this.
Absolutely.
Just in the sense of they really also do a great job at bringing the community together for events in classes. And so it would be a great way to really bring the brain trusts together to have the best possible events that we can do.
They're very good at throwing public events. I mean, they're the experts at it.
Yeah. So with that, I see Raj, your hand is up. Go right ahead.
So I'm going to try to fold this in, and it's probably going to fail a little bit. So bear with me. I think Robin will get it, though. First of all, I think this is fantastic, Robin. Thank you. And pre-COVID, the board was talking about, we kind of threw EGRP another task, right? We asked them to figure out how to engage with segments of our community that don't always come out and have events of their own. So if there's any way to kind of revisit what we were talking about, and I'd be happy to connect offline, Robin, and sort of, I honestly, I let that go a little bit because of COVID. I think that once that hit, we just sort of, that was one of those initiatives that maybe just needed to take a little bit of time. But if we're going to do this, then it seems like some of that impetus could be inserted into here.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that, Raj. Also, before I forget, I posted today on the Design Five Corners Facebook site 3 grants that are coming up for community engagement and stuff. And I actually sent an email to Micah just because we've been emailing back and forth this week and asked him to take a look at it.
Great. So that's great. I think you know what I'm talking about. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
This sounds like a great time.
All right, George, go right ahead.
I wholeheartedly support this. I think it also takes advantage of a lot of the expertise that's in the community. I think there's just all kinds of talent out there in the village and the town that people that could lead these kinds of classes. You asked me about history. I can get to some really ancient history. EJRP back in the 1990s, I remember a long time ago, they had a very extensive, and Andrew, you might remember it, they had an extensive list of classes. They taught all kinds of things. And then because of Act 60, and I won't go into all the details, they had to really scale it back. But I know that it was wildly popular back then. And so this is sort of a rekindling of that. It's sort of resurrection of that. So I guess Phoenix is the appropriate name, but maybe not for that reason. But I wholeheartedly support it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great community builder. Obviously, it's going to have to be tuned in and aligned with what happens with COVID. But I'd like to see us move forward and develop these ideas. I'm not so sure about the Smiley or in Essex Junction. We'll have to talk about a little bit more about that. But the other two, absolutely, yeah, fine.
That's great. I mean, this was just to get the nod from you guys, and then we can go out and take the temperature and see who's interested, how many people are interested, partner work, spaces, stuff like that. I'm sure some people have it in their own facility. Others would be looking for us to maybe come up with something that they could use. I've already spoken to the library about their new fabulous pavilion outside, and Wendy thought it was a great idea, and she'd like to incorporate that. It's got electricity, it's got light, it's got everything you'd need in the wonderful, late summer, early autumn days with bright sunshine, 80-degree, low humidity that we get around here.
Sounds great. Before we make a motion or vote on this, are there any questions from the public? Annie Cooper, see your hand, go right ahead.
Oh, chatty tonight, I'm sorry to say. Andrew, can you ask Robin, can we find out from Robin, I feel a little stupid. I'm not sure if the word Phoenix is something I should already have known about. Is this a title that Robin gave to it? Can someone help me understand the title?
I think Robin is probably the only person who can speak to the motivations as to why Phoenix was chosen.
Phoenix is just rising from the ashes, it's just coming back from being at a low point. It's I was looking more for the PPE.
So I understand correctly, Andrew, that, and Robin, I'm just making sure I follow Evan was correct before to redirect me to Andrew. So I'm just, if I understand correctly, the title is Robin's idea as well.
Yes.
Okay. So then two things. One is the New York Times just published an article, and I'm pretty sure they stole Robin's idea because Governor
I'm sure they did.
Again,
Cuomo is
So
doing
typical.
pop-up
Typical of them.
entertainment through New York State. Sorry, George. What did you say, George? Oh.
No, it's very typical in New York Times to steal Robin's ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure they got the idea from Robin. And I agree that working with EGRP is fantastic. And not that anybody cares what I think, but I think that. And also, Robin, if you want any help.
absolutely, Annie. Absolutely.
All right. These are great ideas. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Annie. Any other questions, comments from the public before we bring this back to the board? Being none, if somebody wanted to, hang on a second as I pull this back up. Was this something we need to make a motion on? Yeah, why don't we go ahead and if someone wants to make a motion to the extent.
All right, I'll make a motion that the trustees give staff permission to research the potential for each of these initiatives and bring back proposals for trustees' approval that would include timeframes, estimates, costs, if any. Any cost would be paid from the Economic Development Fund.
And is there a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
I think Raj beat you to it though, George. So there's a motion on the table. It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great, that passed unanimously. Robin, as always, thank you. I really look forward to seeing these come through to fruition. Okay, and that will bring us to the next two agenda items are discussions that we will have in executive session. So that will move us into the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you, George. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? George, is the hand a holdover?
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Seeing as there are none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Pass unanimously. Thank you. And that
Dan,
goes in.
you are now sideways.
Who sideways?
Dan.
Yeah, Dan, he's,
Never mind, now he's gone.
Everybody now.
Yeah, he's gone.
you're gone altogether. That's fine.
All right.
You
I
just,
took a screenshot.
you've depixelated.
Reminds me of like the 1970s couch my grandmother or grandparents had.
Yeah.
Anyway, as we digress, that brings us to the reading file, board member comments. And as the rest of the board thinks of comments, I just want to make sure to point out the email from Brad Luck about the questions regarding the merger booklets and EJRP and their role of providing childcare for the entire community through EWSD. If you have not seen this, I highly recommend taking a look to better understand why the Essex Westford School District had asked them to do this, as well as the benefits and cost savings to everybody in Essex, including all of the town, those who don't live in the village, and the great programming they provide, and a great philosophical debate we could have at some point in time about the role of government in providing these services. Let's see. Raj, I think your hand was up first.
Yep. I'm just trying to, I think I just pulled up the wrong Village Center development. The only thing, it's just, this is so minor. Robin's providing these great updates for what's happening in the village. And I appreciate that. If we could start including addresses. There's been a few months where we've had the Hinsdale property referenced. And because I'm slow, it takes me a while, but anybody else who's kind of perusing these things from, it's not on this board or not on the Planning Commission or Capital Committee, may not know where that is. So it might just be helpful to put an address in there. It's just such a minor thing, but someone brought it up to me and I thought it was a good idea. So
Good suggestion.
it's just very minor.
Thank you, Raj. Go ahead, George.
This is a little work request that I'm not sure, or maybe a trustee request. I'm not sure where this goes, but I was at the Planning Commission meeting last Thursday. And the reason I went to it is because they had invited the other committees to join them as sort of a preamble and preliminary discussion and an update. The Bike Walk Committee was there. The Tree Advisory Committee was there. The Economic Development Committee was there. Annie spoke. And in the course of all the discussion, and I wanted to hear it, and it was great, but several people mentioned something called the Landscaping Fund. And apparently the idea here is, and Amber is nodding her head, and so it might be, Amber might know it, and Dan might be after Dan. So the idea, if I get it, is that developers, applicants are supposed to spend something like 2.5% of their budget on landscaping. And if they don't, they're supposed to make an equivalent contribution to the village landscaping fund. And several people said, where is this landscaping fund? Where's the money that's gone into it? And so I was thinking about this, and I'm assuming this is in the Land Development Code. And I thought this really kind of bothered me for a bunch of reasons. I haven't ever dealt with the landscaping fund. If there was such a fund, I would assume that funds are things that trustees get to spend. Staff can make recommendations, but the authority to actually spend the money would have to go through the trustees. And I don't remember dealing with one of these, although my memory isn't what it used to be. But I'm also wondering what exactly is the point of this? If I'm a developer and I am not, I'm not sure I want to make a contribution to the village. I'd rather spend all my money on my own application. Instead of saying, well, gee, I didn't spend enough money on landscaping, so I'm going to give the village X thousand dollars. And so I'm just curious, what is this about? And do we need to maybe expand the definition of what comprises landscaping so that, and then just say developers have to spend this much money on landscaping, and here's a very broad definition of what landscaping is. But I think from a trustee perspective, I don't really want to have another fund. We have a rolling stock fund, a capital fund, lots of wastewater treatment funds. We have all kinds of funds, and we have a land acquisition fund. We just discovered an economic development fund. I would rather not have yet another fund that we have to keep track of and audit and then lose track of. So I'm just wondering if we could have someone look into this, and I'm not sure if it's probably Robin looking at, and it just jogged my memory because we're saying Robin is going to be updating the Land Development Code this year. So this might be an appropriate time to have him kind of look at this and, say, does this thing need to be revised? And I'll stop talking because I think Amber can maybe enlighten me about it all. Thanks.
I'm not sure if I can enlighten, but I believe Robin gave a presentation to the Planning Commission at one point. I don't believe this fund actually exists. And I think that's what the conversation is. But obviously Robin is on the call, so I'll let him speak to it himself. But I know that this conversation has come up many a times among the Planning Commission members. And I thought the end result was it's not like there's a bucket of money with $5 grand in it that's just waiting for somebody to spend it. It just doesn't exist because it's been taken care of. Like they've expended the money for landscaping or whatnot.
Robin, did you want to jump in on that? I'm sorry, not that I direct staff. Evan, did you want to jump in on that?
I would like Robin to address it first, and if he's still on the call. If not, Greg's there, and I'll jump in afterwards. Greg, why don't you take a stab?
Sure, and Robin, chime in after I speak. I know you know more about this than I do. It's something that's come up in the past. Robin and I have talked about it. It generally, Robin works with the developers to make sure that they put what's needed landscaping wise into their projects. When we've talked about it, one of the ideas is that, kind of to George's point, what is the point? It's tough to track. You're tracking it based on, is it 2% of the project based on the estimated project when it starts? Is it based on the final project? How do you get that number? Landscaping wise, are you buying wholesale? Are you buying retail? What's the cost? So again, back to that land development code, probably a good time to take a look at it and just what are the landscaping objectives in each zoning district, and does such and such project meet those objectives? So that's my knowledge about it. But Robin, again, feel free to chime in.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like he has a bad connection.
But I would agree that's how I remember the conversation. And again, our goal is to get developers to build to the plan they submitted to the Plan Commission.
Right.
You know, you may change a species of a tree or something because it's not in stock or time of season. But other than that, if you promise the community a pretty picture, build to the pretty picture.
Yeah. Fine.
Yeah. So we'll talk with Robin this week, and we'll present something as we get into the land development code rewrite.
Yeah.
No need to belabor it.
Yep.
Thank you. Raj, you haven't gone yet?
Yeah, so I was going to comment on that, but everybody's done a fine job. The land development code, I'm assuming that's going to have more than one or two public hearings and opportunities for people to participate, and those will be, yeah, okay. The only thing I was going to say about the other topic was it started to sound a little bit at the beginning like the conversation we've been meaning to have around impact fees, developer fees, all the other stuff that we keep wanting to get back to. And I'm maybe not aligning, but revisiting. But it sounds like it's a little bit different, so.
Go ahead, Amber.
Well, if you don't mind me jumping in, it's just when someone says a fund, you know, we don't need yet another fund. I mean, you know, I'd rather have the money, the developer just make sure they spend the money on their project, get a nicer looking door or some nicer looking windows or a nicer looking sidewalk or something, you know, or something,
Agreed.
Instead of giving us money that goes into a fund that gets lost, you know?
If we want them to do something and they cement over, how are we going to use that fund to re-landscape that cement? I mean, it just makes more sense for them to do it the first time.
Yeah.
And just to have that clarity at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amber.
I was just going to say, actually, to Raj's point, not only are there several public hearings, but every planning commission meeting, the way that they usually center is they take a chapter and they kind of go through it. And so it's a really great opportunity for the public to come out, especially when we're operating in a Zoom mentality here, and voice their opinion on each of these different sections, including the conversation that we're having about landscaping. Now is the time to do it, not in a year from now after it's already written.
What's the best way for us to create interest in that, do you think? I know Zoom, I mean, look, we're getting more participation than we have ever had because people can do it on their couch now. But how can we get people to, as a board, can we, because it's pretty important. I mean, you know, because we always hear, or I haven't been on the board long enough to have an always hear, but I'm sure people would say, like George and Andrew, they always hear after a decision's been made, you know, and really these decisions are just based on what's on the books. So I guess just getting the word out a lot, but.
Yeah, and I don't know how to do that. I mean, I think, I can't say I always hear in that quotations, but as somebody who sat on the planning commission through some pretty large projects, we had nobody with their sitting in front of us telling us that they didn't like these things until after it was approved, and then it became an issue. So it does happen, and we do publicize. It's always publicized on, you know, obviously the Village's website. I think at the time it was Essex Reporter. You know, Front Porch Forum and stuff. So any other thoughts as to where these things can be published so that folks are hearing about them in advance of the meeting and can plan accordingly?
Well, I know when Robin was with us, he had mentioned that he saw a few community engagement grants. And so if there were some extra funds to help out with engaging the community in this, having some social media presence, even doing some targeted ads on social media, Front Porch Forum, to be able to bring the community out to these conversations would be beneficial. And to have those have hyperlinks so that way people can just click on the meeting when it's time, as I think Raj had mentioned, or Amber did already, that you can join from the comfort of your couch. You don't even have to have your camera on. You can be in your pajamas.
Can I just, Jan, I know your hand's up. I just want to follow up on that thought before I lose it. I'm sorry. So they go chapter by chapter at meetings, but do they sort of put that chapter to bed? And the reason I'm asking is if someone wanted to watch after the meeting, because I think they're recorded, right? Would they still then have an opportunity to make comments? Like there's still more process involved. They don't have to be live to offer input.
It's a lengthy process. I went through at least one, maybe two when I was on the planning commission. And there's opportunity throughout the whole process before the whole thing is, is adopted or approved by the planning commission and moved to the trustees. The other thing I just want to bring up when we were talking about the landscaping fund, as George is calling it, and, it's not so much we need a fund, but what we need, I don't know if Andrew, if you were on the board, but we established a bunch of.
Hey, Robin, you might want to mute them.
Is that who is that?
But anyways, the ordinances that we established pertain to noxious weeds, people, dilapidated structures, and such. But what we need, not so much as the fund, but we need enforcement of the code, and that is key. I don't think we have enough enforcement of the code. People paying fines for non-compliance. Obviously, to get your occupancy certificate, you have to comply with all the conditions that your application had on it that was approved by the planning commission. So that could be something to look at.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you, Dan. So Annie, I see your hand is up. This is board member comments. I would say if you have something that you'd like to address to us quickly, I'm okay with it.
Well, is this something that the public can weigh in on at any time?
Traditionally, no, but we're almost done.
That's fine. Nope. I appreciate that. That's very nice. No, I would like to follow the rules. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to just wrap up what I said, Andrew. I'm not looking, I don't have a solution. I'm not saying let's abolish the landscaping fund but I would like maybe, and Amber gave some clarity, and Dan, I just like maybe, to get a little input, what Robin thinks about it. Should this be something we need to be revised and so forth? And I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Doesn't have to happen right away, but just over the course of the next year, does this, since there seems to be a little bit of confusion on the part of some committee members about what it is. That's all.
Robin, I see your hand is up, or is this about
Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, Anne, you called me away for a second there. Yeah, the landscaping fund, we've had a few inquiries from citizens regarding the landscaping fund and how much money did we get or didn't get or what's outstanding. My one memory is when Dave Crawford was here, we got $1,800 from Bartlett Weaver. Don't know where that went, but they gave us the check and I passed it on to Dave at the time. Maybe we need the general fund, I'm not sure. Most of the other facilities, what people seem to forget is the landscaping fund is not just plants. It's hardscaping, it's pergolas, it's all sorts of stuff. So when you're looking at, what was built, what was spent, it's not just how many plants went in there. My two main concerns at the minute are the connector road. You've heard me sing this song before, but the VTrans policy does not provide funds for trees, benches. The lights we have in the village, they will pay for standard lights, but not the preferred lights in the village. We need money for that. The new 1 Main Street Pocket Park, we need money for that. So all of this is overseen by the Community Development Department. It seems to me that any funds that do come from developments that can't meet, it's actually a 2 or 2.5% standard. I've seen emails where it said 2 or 3%. It's not. It's 2% for the larger projects, 2.5% for the smaller projects. I think it should go into a fund that's overseen by the Community Development Department so that the money is spent judiciously and on projects that are the priority. In other words, projects in the village right of way. Because, you know, as we said about One Main Street, we're not just creating a sense of place, we're trying to create a place of pride. I think that's where that money will be well spent.
Thank you, Robin. Board members, are there any other comments? And if not, then I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved, Andrew.
I think we need to do a little more specific than that.
Okay.
I'm trying to get the memo myself.
Hang on a second. You hadn't put it up there. I can put it up there. Do you want to put it up anyway?
Got it right here.
I do not have it memorized.
No, I've got it here.
You got it? Okay.
I move that the trustees make the specific finding that general public knowledge of confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the legislative body would place the village at a substantial disadvantage. So that's motion 1. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. So that passed unanimously. And motion 2, I move that the trustees enter into executive session to discuss confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the legislative body pursuant to 1 VSA, Section 313A1F, to include the unified manager, village attorney, assistant manager, and deputy manager.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so that also passed unanimously. For members of the public, we will be in executive session for a little while. I don't believe we're coming back to this meeting. I think we may adjourn straight from that meeting.
Andrew, question: do we have a separate link to go to that meeting? Is that correct?
Yes, we do. And
okay, thanks.
Yeah, Greg,
Yeah,
I see your hand up.
Before you all go, there's a second motion for executive session, or sorry, a third one, in this case, to discuss the evaluation of a public official.
Do you just want to do that now then?
Sure.
So
may as well.
I'll make the other motion that that the trustees enter into executive session to discuss the evaluation of a public official in accordance with 1 VSA Section 313A3.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, George. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Also passed unanimously.
So Andrew, when you guys adjourn and go into executive session, I'm going to close out this meeting.
Yes. And Kathy Ainsworth.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that any motions to close the executive sessions and anything that happens afterward be recorded and sent to me.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you,
great
Kathy.
evening, everybody.
You too,
Good night.
Kathy.
Well,
Let me see you in executive session.
take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.